Hey everyone, I'm Natasha T Miller, and this is The Science of Grief. Today we hear from Alex Nitsche, who shares his story about a different aspect of grief he experienced when he was transitioning, including pushback from his family after his transition began. In a little bit, I'll talk with a friend of the podcast and longtime mental health counselor Bonnie Wheeler about Alex's story and the power of forgiveness. Plus, later, I'll share a poem that I wrote that I think fits right into this episode. But first, here's our producer, Patrick Vaughn, speaking with Alex Nitsche.
For some reason, the thing that kept coming back to me was this binder. And I have two of them, but what's inside is Pokemon cards. So I think I've been collecting since around 9. I've stopped recently because I just don't buy them so much, but I hold on to them, and it brings back stuff from when I was younger. And currently I'm watching the newer one, not the newest, but I think it's Sun and Moon. But what I really liked is they touch on some topics that I was not prepared for them to touch on, because they actually went over grief in one of the episode I watched recently, which is there's a Pokemon called Litten, but Litten lives with this Pokemon Stoutland for a little bit, and Stoutland's really old. So Stoutland dies in the episode, but it goes through it in such a way that it's it shows this Litten's grief through it, and they're not ready yet, but they eventually come to terms with it as a rainbow in the sky appears and the face of Stoutland's in the clouds. But and then it goes through this whole kind of grief process. I'm not gonna lie, I almost got teary-eyed. I was like, why? No, stop it. But yeah, they also touch on morals of be kind to people, even if you don't fully know who they are. They always show such kindness and compassion. And I think even in the older ones, they showed it more where they would be nice to Team Rocket. Even though Team Rocket's always after Pikachu or whatever, but they would always be nice in some way.
And then my natural next question is can you tell me more about you?
I personally kind of like myself as I am right now. I think who I am as a person is not bad. I've come a long way from who I used to be, and I've Pokemon evolved. No, I've changed into the person I am today. But I think sometimes it feels like people still want you to change constantly, and it's not even always that they're trying to do it with malintent or anything like that. They're trying to do it out of a sense of compassion, oh, well, don't you understand? I'm I understand that some things maybe aren't what you think they should, but from my eyes, I think I'm at a good place in my life.
I know that you are very interested in creative writing, poetry, drawing, animation, video games. Could you tell me a little bit about what you like about that?
I'm more of a vocalist person, and that's something where I like to write my own songs, or just I do a lot of improv when it comes to trying to make stuff. If I'm for example, singing something, I like to have a recording set, and then I'll just start working with if I throw down a free to use track or something and I want to work with that, I usually just think about it, or I just randomly throw in nothing and I just start singing and trying to work with stuff. So that's with that, and with the kind of writing thing. And then something that kind of branches off of that is I kind of in a sense voice acting. That's something that I really like doing. And it's a great thing to do if you can make those people happy through I don't know, animation can be brought into this, where it's people who do voices for animes or cartoons or whatever, they bring the character to life, and then there's people who are hey, that character's like me, or I like that character, and it's that person who did the voice was I did a good job, because maybe I brought across what this character is supposed to be and this person's yes. I don't know. And I do totally random voices. Of course I can do some if you'd like, but it's okay.
Do it.
Okay. Anything?
Anything you want. Yeah.
Okay. Trying to think how. Okay. I am the Bog Witch. I will make you into a stew. It's just like silly stuff like that. And it's like,
I like that.
it's like, I don't know, this one's not very good. I'm a witch. Or I can go like, hey guys, how's it going? I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm just talking, It's just like all over the place.
I like that. It's like a chipmunk.
Yeah,
Reminds me of like an Alvin.
elf, chipmunk, sprite, whatever. And it's like, I do lower voices where it's like, hey, what do you think you're doing here? My voice is a bit today, so I don't know. I'm giving myself the benefit of the doubt where I can do better, but
I like it.
Well, thank you. It's like I like doing kind of stuff like that, silly and like all over the place, and accents or something I like doing. You know, sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm bad, and yeah, for my profession though, I plan to go into something along the lines of like therapy or social work. I want to be there to kind of help or assist people in their lives to be like, you have the support you need. You have someone you can talk to. Mm-hmm. We can work through whatever you need to work through. And, you know, may that be grief or may that be anything. Like, that's the kind of profession I am willing to go into and I want to look more into. And that. But when it comes to like you noticing things like about yourself, something that I latch on I have latched on to, and I think I've slowly gotten away from that, is the my voice. That was a huge thing because I never really liked my voice. I like it as a now. I really like. I think it's fine now, but I used to hear my own voice, and wow, it would just cause me to like have so many bad things happen. Like I would have this sense of getting a mixture of angry and sad, mm-hmm. Just because I'm like, this is not, why do I sound like this? This isn't how I want to sound. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't fit who I am. And it's like there's also like those moments of where you pop into like a weird clarity. But I think I've noticed something with myself and even sometimes with some of my friends. It's that they don't want to bother people. And I think that's like a huge thing where it's like they don't want to reach out because they're like, they don't want to have that burden of what I'm going through. And I think that can be like very common among like a lot of people. But I think that maybe plays a part in everything else that kind of followed, because it's like my parents got that divorce, not a big issue, but it's like how each parent reacted to that. You can see how like different reactions and different types of like being, you know, and like stuff happened on both sides. So I would say something that I don't want to say I didn't have my childhood, because truth be told, I think overall I had a pretty decent childhood. You know, mm-hmm. I'm happy with who I am today. And I think like parts of that is like leading from the good and the bad. But I think something that was brought up to me later in life of how I acted when I was younger was I would always kind of be that sort of peacemaker, which is, it's a good skill to have. And I think that's something I've done throughout my entire life. And it's evolved into something great, because I think it's a very good skill, as I said before. But like, I think an aspect of me doing that kind of, I don't want to say it made me grow up, because I've heard that a lot, where it makes you grow up quicker or like faster. I don't know if that's exactly what I'm going with, but I would say my maturity level has always been at a state where maybe my age hasn't been. I guess that would make sense the most, because as I said, like, how many children try to settle disputes amongst people? How many children, like, I mean, there's simple ways they could, like, hey, I want to go play outside. Stop yelling, mommy, daddy, or like, stop doing this. People who I like were friends. You guys are friends. But it's like, I would always try to go at it like more like, we need to resolve this in a very peaceful manner. Mm-hmm. Or like, I would try to be, I don't want to say the adult, but it's like that mature one in the group. I feel like I want to state this here and now, because I feel like it's a little random, but we can throw it in or not. I feel like if somebody changes how they used to be, I don't always feel like people should be so mean to who they used to be. You know, like if I was a certain way in the past and I finally came to the conclusion like, oh, I did not like who that was. I wanted to change. I did change. And if people are still holding back on you, like due to what you used to be, I don't know if that's always like super fair. If somebody did something that wasn't maybe the greatest, but then they realized their mistakes and they went and they put the effort into change. If somebody's being very genuine with how they feel and about what they've said, and they acknowledge that who they were or what they did or any of their faults, if they acknowledge that and say that was wrong, then I feel like that should be acknowledged in its own, and people should be like, you know what? I'm willing to understand and I'm willing to try to see how much you've changed. You know, like generally what I'm trying to say is like, don't always beat people down if they're trying to be better people.
Mm-hmm.
If they're willing to change. If they're not willing to change and they're just going to stay in that same state no matter what, that's a little bit of a different story. But if somebody is willing to go through the effort to be better, give them a chance. So gender dysphoria in high school. I would say that's actually when I started transitioning. Do you want me to go more back? Because I don't actually, did I talk about middle school stuff or?
Yeah, you talked about in middle school you started, oh, sorry, I switched. In middle school you started feeling gender dysphoria, but high school, that's when you transitioned.
Yeah, I transitioned actually in middle school and I actually felt the gender dysphoria.
Yeah, it was a switch.
Yeah. No, of course, yes, I'm willing to go into that. I think generally with gender dysphoria, like when I started feeling that in middle school, I didn't know what it was at first, to be 100% honest. So from what I can give the best of my explanation from the technical term, it basically means to not feel great in your current body and to have like a disconnection with who you are physically, with who you are mentally. I think that's a major role in it. Like my physical was different than maybe from my mental. And there's a huge thing where it's like, oh, I have the brain of a guy, but like, I don't know what kind of brain I have. I guess like it's more of how I feel as a human being. You know, I feel more like a man. I feel more masculine. That's me. But I also have like feminine features, or not features, but like not physical features.
Okay.
like I have feminine things that I like. Like I'm not wearing nail polish right now, but I would like, I like nail polish, or I don't know. I also thought, oh, I've heard that when you go through puberty, most people feel weird. You know, it's common to not feel great about certain aspects of yourself. You know, like, oh, I'm going through this. Oh, I feel so gross. Yuck. I've heard about, like, that's something I think everyone has heard about. Like, oh, yeah. Puberty, whatever. So I just thought, like, what I was feeling was kind of more normal, I guess. I don't remember exactly how I learned about it. I think the first step was I learned about drag kings. To be honest, like, I learned about drag kings. I knew about drag queens, but I was like, wow, this is cool. Maybe I want to be one of those. You know, I'm still fine with being called this, and I'm fine with any pronouns. It's totally cool. Like he, she, they, all up in this. But I think after going through therapy for a little while and trying that out, like I wanted to experiment. See, I'm going to branch off a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think there's a bit of a stigma with testing out new waters when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, because you don't want people to call you something, and then like if you go back, you don't want to feel like you did something wrong, or like that someone won't respect you the same way. Like, oh, so you lied, like that. I think that can be a huge thing with a lot of people, maybe when they are considering coming out, because that was something with me for a while with that. But when it came to like, oh, eventually I came to the realization that I was male. For a very long time, I wasn't sure if it was a phase. To be honest, like I would always tell people like, yeah, I think I'm a guy, but you know, it might be a phase. Like I would bring that up, like, but it might be a phase. So don't get your hopes up, you know, whatever. Cause I didn't want people to look back and be like, what's wrong with this person? Like, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Like, in a sense, I don't know, like, very strange to try to explain, but it's like I didn't want to have that high expectation and then suddenly, oh, it turns out I'm this one. Whoops-a-daisy. But, you know, I would always tell people that, oh, it might be a phase though. And I would always have that self-doubt, I think, in a sense, like, is this real or is it a phase? I didn't start testosterone until around 2019. So that was about when I was, I think it might have been either 10th or 9th grade for me. So I didn't start till then, but you know, like that was something I was constantly worried about for if I were to take testosterone, because I had also read like all of the side effects, all of the everything, because I didn't want to just jump into something randomly, you know. That's where the logical side of me was thinking, like, is this something I really want to go through? Is this something I am prepared to look at? Is the results what I would want the results to be? I know what's reversible and what's not reversible. Let's look into that. What is the super bad stuff that could happen? What is the not super bad stuff that could happen? You know, like I looked into all of that, and it was something like I was constantly weighing, like, is this the thing I want or is it not? Eventually, you know, if you can't tell, I kind of went with, yeah, it's pretty worth it. Pretty nice, actually. So that was something. And it was like, I think one of the major things that I was kind of worried about giving up was I was also a singer when I was younger. And like, I make it sound like I'm a big shot, but no, like I had a decent singing voice when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to lose that because I used to be a soprano, and you know, I used to sing soprano 1 in my choir. Yeah, way up.
Right up there.
So I used to sing soprano, and over the years, like I went to alto, and that was before I took testosterone. I could sing lower. I just wanted to be placed closer to the guys, I think, because like I was still at that uncertain stage, and this was in high school more. I should clarify, like I've kind of changed over to the high school. That's when I started having the more manness, the more like transitioning to male. Before like I fully understood, and that's when I was still having those concerns. But I went from the soprano to the alto, and then eventually to tenor. This was before I still had started testosterone, and then like some of that change happened within the same year, because like we have choir, or we had choir before everything. So I went down this line, and the last year I think I got placed into bass. So I went like
all the way down the scale.
But that was my main concern, was losing that singing voice, because that was something I liked. I didn't like my actual voice, but my singing voice I thought was really nice, which was kind of strange because I don't think most people have a conversation, and I wasn't planning to have a conversation with just singing. Like, we're having a musical. Like, I wasn't going to be like singing around like, how's your day going? I hope it's well. I don't know. I wasn't going to do that. But, you know, that was my one major concern, I think, with all of it. And, you know, eventually, as you can tell, I've gotten over that, and I'm now where I am. But when it came to transitioning from being, thinking I'm neutral, to transitioning to like the male guy thing, that was like in its own, like, oh, wait, what's happening now? Oh, I guess like maybe this was like a weird step. And it's like, now I realize I'm like, it was just, I guess, to be like funny, like it was a transition in its own, because it was like I was transitioning from thinking, okay, maybe I'm just neutral, pretty chill with everything, to, oh wait, that was just like a kind of stopping point, a kind of like realization point. And you know, now I'm at the point where I'm like, hey, you know what, this seems pretty right. And you know, I'm pretty confident in who I am right now. I'm a guy, but I don't really care what you call me so much, like, but I am a man, and I know I am a man. I don't know. But I think it was difficult at first with the whole transition. I'm going to go more, I'm just going to clarify to you. I'm going to go more into high school now, like definitely.
Yeah.
When it came to first like majorly transitioning to male, a major thing was I started hormone blockers to start. You know, I didn't go straight into like, yeah, let's get that tea. I started with the hormone blockers. Yeah. You know, I first got hormone blockers, and truth be told, like, medicines are medicines. They work on people differently. It kind of worked, kind of didn't. I had to be bumped up, and it still never fully worked. So I think at that point, that's like kind of was the pushing thing. Maybe, you know what, maybe we can go into that one. Maybe, yeah. But it was, the process to get there it took time, and it's something you have to be patient about. And, you know, I was always told, like, be patient, you're going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. And I'm like, you don't know. And I'm like, okay, you kind of knew. Like there was that, like, you kind of knew, but So it's like, you gotta look where you're at. You can't just look at the where you were, or like only look like, I want to be at the mountaintop. You can't just only be like, I want to be there right now at this very moment. Because like, it sucks. I'm not going to lie. But, I feel like in a sense it was worth the wait. I feel like where I'm at now is great. But when it came to transitioning from the hormone blockers to the testosterone, I had to go through this whole process with a therapist, and we had to sit down. And I think I had to do this even with hormone blockers a little bit, but it got more into depth when it came to testosterone. I had to sit down and we had to make sure, like, are you really trans? Are you really a guy? I'm putting that way more simple than it is. Like, I'm not trying to make that person, the therapist, sound insensitive. Like, that's not what at all. They just want to make sure, because this is something that is very, very, life altering, very life altering. Because it's like, there have been people who have detransitioned because they didn't like where it was. And that's no one's fault at all. That's just how events played out. But it's like, we wanted to make sure this was what I wanted, and that what everything had led up to that point was accurate and everything was good. And a major thing actually was, with some people in my life, they were worried that it was actually caused, like, the reason I was this way or was wanting to transition was out of like a sense of trauma. That was something that they were concerned about. And, looking back, it's like, I respect that they cared, like, that they were worried about that, because they didn't want me to do something that I'd regret. But like, now, of course, these people, they don't think that anymore. Like, I want to clarify, they do not think it was because of trauma anymore. They understand. Evolved. Yes, it resolved itself. I think that is a very important thing to say, because like, it's not like that they stayed in those ways. It's like they were just concerned at the time, and now they're like, nah, okay, it's just who you are, and we support you, which is great, because I'm very thankful for the people who have been able to support me in my life. Like, I understand that there's people who are not going to support me and who don't like me. And that's okay. You know what? It's easier said than done, but I try to look at it like, just because not everyone's going to like me doesn't mean I have to change for that person so they do like me. I should be the person I think I like,
How do they determine, like, how do they make that determination? Because you said they had to, like,
got to.
Make sure that you, like, knew what you were doing, and like that this was like not like a trauma thing or a this thing or that thing. How did they decide?
Well, I had a few meetings about that. I think I had at least 2 specifically, like, for that. So that's like an hour and a half, like, talking and trying to get to the bottom of it, and trying to see, could there be any roots that were led to this? Like, could there be like, oh, we grabbed this from this, maybe that makes a connection. It was like, we went into that. I also saw a specialist before starting testosterone as well. And I think it was not my therapist, it was someone else. When it came to the first, like, this meeting that I was having with these people to talk about, like, this whole, like, what does it mean to go through this process? Are you aware of everything? Like, that was an extra thing. And at that time, my parents were still, like, trying to understand, like, all of it, but they weren't sure with the whole pronouns thing still. And, I'm really good with keeping it together, like, not showing that things bothered me. And I think that eventually, like, during this, they kept on calling me, like, the wrong pronoun. And I did not want it to happen, but I just started crying, because I think it just had gotten to a point where it wore down on me. And it was not intentional. It wasn't pity crying. It wasn't like, get me on testosterone, I want it now. It was like legit. It was wow. It was strange. It was really weird that it happened, but I mean, I think it started to get a click in them, like, that was meaning something, like, what they were saying was actually affecting me in a certain way. And, just because they don't understand something, doesn't mean like they're not like, okay, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean I won't support you. Like they support most of the things I've done in my life, and they try to support whatever I do because they're like, this is who you are, and we understand that. So, and they wanted me to be happy, like that's especially with it all. Like they wanted to understand, but they also just wanted me to be happy. And that's something that is very good. That like now in our lives, it's like I've come to a point in my transition where it's like they see that I'm happy and they're happy for me, and they're also like something I could go into, which actually relates to grief a little bit, if you'd like, is my father.
Okay.
And I respect this, and I can see where he was coming from with all this. For a very long time, he was grieving in his own sense because he felt like he had lost someone, because I was changing, and it felt like who I was going to be gone forever, and that that person was dead, and that really took a toll on him, and for a while, and it was like I could see that he was sad about it. But, it's gotten to a point where it's like, I think he realized that he wasn't actually losing someone. I'm still the same person. I'm still his child. And, I am just now his son instead of what I was before. And I think he realized that it's not that different. He can still love the person I am, He's my dad, and, he cares about me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, like my parents just want my happiness, which is something I'm very grateful for. So, yeah.
Was that difficult for you when your dad was struggling with that?
If I'm to be completely honest, I don't think it was difficult in one way. Like it wasn't difficult because I understood that's what needed to happen. Because it was hard. I understood what I was going through. I looked at it in my perspective first. I was like, change is very interesting, and it's something that I'm going through, and it's a lot for me to personally handle. So I also went through the thought of he's handling it in a different way, and it could be hurting him. And it's like I understood that it did feel bad, but I realized it's what needed to happen. Because as I said, don't change for others, but also maybe don't only stay the same for others. That could be added on. It's like, don't do something that will make you suffer, or that will make you not be genuinely who you want to be because of somebody else. So I understood that I might be, in a sense, like I don't want to say I was hurting him or making him suffer, but it's like there was that sense of grief and loss that came along with my transition at first. And it's something that I didn't want to see, in a sense. I was like, I don't want to cause other people to have this. It's back to the thing where it's, I don't want to burden other people. That was partially what was going on, but I used my logical side and I said, but this needs to happen. This is who I am, and I don't want to see him like this, but I have the feeling that he'll come to terms with it, and that he'll understand that one day he'll see that I am the same person, but I'm just different looking, or I've changed a little bit. But that doesn't mean you have to get rid of the memories you had, or you have to act like that person's dead.
When do you remember a specific moment when you had the mental switch, when you're like, this is something I want to do?
Oh, that's a toughie. I think it probably happened my second year of high school. I had someone else in our school. I go to a very kind of small school. At the school I was attending, there was someone who was a trans male, or who was maybe going into that, and they had the binder. They had the majestic binder, which I hadn't had actually yet. I didn't buy one until I think I was 16, maybe. I don't know. How many years is high school? Yeah, no, that would have worked out. It was 16, 17. One of those birthdays is when I got it. So I didn't have it before meeting this person. And I remember I saw them in the men's bathroom because the door was open, because it's you go in and then there's the stalls on the other side where you can't see. So I saw them and I was like, okay, And then I quickly ran in, and this was before like I was transitioned to that point where it's like I'd be using the man's bathroom or whatever. I went in and was like, hey, I have a question. It's okay if you don't want to answer it. Like I was just trying to be like as just not intrusive as possible, but I wanted to ask the question because I had never met a trans person.
Yeah.
I was like, could you tell me about this? And they were like, yeah, sure. Because like this person hasn't started testosterone, and they're still in my class, they're in my grade, and they're probably going to they might start testosterone soon, or they were also like through the switching thing where it's like maybe I'm neutral, maybe I'm not, but like at this point they were at the masculine stage, and I was like, can you tell like what's it like to wear that? And I would ask these little questions because I was trying to understand it a little more from a more like, oh, you're a real person, yay. It's all gonna be all right.
And now, I'm happy to have mental health counselor Bonnie Wheeler back on the podcast to shed some light on the grief that can come from life changes and transitions and family expectations, and also the power of forgiveness.
Okay, well, I'm Bonnie Wheeler. I'm a mental therapist, recently retired from Michigan State University Counseling and Psychiatric Services, where part of what I did was specialize in working with young adults and specialize in grief and loss and other kinds of issues that come up on a college campus.
To jump right into Alex's interview, do you have any thoughts on what you heard in the interview?
Well, my first thought was, what a wonderfully resilient young person. I loved some of the attitude and enthusiasm and thought it was actually quite insightful, some of the things Alex said about grief and other people's reactions, especially in his family, or I assume his family.
Yeah, I know that speaking to that, Alex talked about, being a peacekeeper between their parents. And I just wanted to know, what effects does that have on a young person trying to keep the peace between these adults?
It is, in fact, a huge stress because they're sensitive to the other people's needs ahead of their own. And keeping peace, it certainly meets Alex's own needs as well, because you live better in a peaceful environment. But when you feel like you always have to be aware, that it just is an added dimension that it makes you a little bit in your relationships hypervigilant about what the signals are that there's distress coming. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just thinking about, Alex was going through their own transition, and at the same time, trying to feel everything that they were experiencing in their own world, but also trying to be this peacekeeper to their parents. So I agree with you that additional stress could be a lot. Alex also talked about facing pushback from his parents when he was transitioning. How can we deal with that kind of conflict in a healthy way when the relationship is with someone that you're very close to?
Actually, Alex had come to kind of a more comfortable space with it, not wanting people to be unhappy, but really wanted them to be able to cherish old pictures and things like that without it being a stressful thing. And I think that acknowledging that and saying that out loud to people who are struggling with it, it's like, yeah, you can celebrate the little me that was, because I was there too. We can celebrate that together. But this is the me that's now.
I love that, celebrating the little me that was, but also the person that I am right now.
Well, I think one of the healthier ways is a sense to not really say goodbye, but just say, you did the best surviving in the world when we were 10 or when we were 8. You did a really fine job, and I appreciate that, but I'm the one that's going to keep us safe now. I'm the one that's going to negotiate the world now. So sort of an internal dialogue saying, you're still part of me, I'm not throwing you out because that was the lived experience at the time. But I'm now here. I'm the one that's going to keep us safe and keep us functioning in the world. So I actually have had people in the past do an imaginary conference table where they have themselves at every age around that table. And, that's in the back of the head. And when an issue comes up, the you at whatever age feels strongest about it says, I got this one. And what we all ultimately do is we begin to turn the decision-making over to the person who's actually, the me who is in the present. And, most people know that feeling, especially if you have siblings, of one of your siblings says something to you, and you instantly feel like 11 years old. And that's the 11-year-old at the conference table saying, I got this one. I know how to behave here. So we all negotiate that within ourselves to honor our own little kids or our own younger self at the same time that we are honoring our present self.
Yeah, that's really important what you said of I got this. It's not that we're abandoning this other self. This new self is taking over, but this new self is keeping all of us safe. So I really appreciate that. Alex talked about having gender dysphoria and transitioning. What I would like to ask is mourning the loss of one's born gender something that you've seen in your practice, and does it resemble other kinds of grief?
Well, I have certainly come across it. I think it's different in gender transition. Well, you would grieve different things depending on what direction you're going. Who have gone female to male, who are very surprised at how they're treated differently, the different power dynamics, and they also are grieving the ability to be more emotional and more sensitive. So I think going the other direction, male to female, you'd be grieving some of the same things. The difference in power and the difference in respect, in fact, that you're treated with in public. Also, we're not really binary, any of it. It's a spectrum. So I think one of the things with people who are transitioning, they get to pick a little more what they can keep or what they want to, because they might have a heightened awareness of that. I think it has felt to me when I've encountered it like it's a typical grief of, well, I couldn't be who they wanted me to be, whoever they are. And grief comes with that. And then there's the grief, being sort of observers of the grief of the family and the pressure to be who they want you to be. I know some trans men who still get pink purses as gifts from family members. So there's that pressure, and it doesn't go. It sometimes does not go away.
Yeah, I want to ask, from my own personal story. I'm a queer woman of color, and at some point when I was coming out, I felt my mother's grief. I felt my father's grief, and I always tried to figure out, how do I, and to those young listeners, what are ways in which you can be happy with yourself while also feeling the grief of someone that you love, when that grief is really about your happiness. That grief is because you're happy. How do you navigate those two worlds?
That's a challenge, isn't it? That's a challenge of letting people, well, you navigate it and with different personalities, probably different ways, but the first thing that comes to mind is, as you become more comfortable with your authentic self, then people really see that you're more comfortable in your own skin when you come out, when you transition, whatever it is. And the more comfortable you can become, it shows them that. And really what parents want, even in their grief, is they want their children to be happy. And having seen it many times where people come out or they transition, and just the difference of, the only phrase that I've ever found that covers it is being more comfortable in your own skin. Just knowing who you are, and then that helps other people through it as well. If they're not willing to see that, then there's the grief of accepting that they're just not willing to move forward. And that's another process of controlling only what you can control. And really, I think in our example of Alex, there's the pressure of trying to keep the parents, moderate the parents and their relationship. So there's a hypersensitivity to what their moods are. And learning to let go of that and say they're in charge of their own moods and they get to take care of themselves.
That's important. They get to take care of themselves. I used to, when I was younger, I would go to like all of the weddings in my family. And I would always wear dresses to the weddings. And I don't like dresses. I hate dresses. And I just assumed that everybody there wanted to see me in the dress or they would be uncomfortable, right? And they, my family, oh my God, look at you, we love it. But then when I stopped wearing dresses and I started to wear what made me comfortable, my family also loved that as well. And I think that's why what you just said was important of people, your parents and your family members ultimately wanting you to be happy. And it took for me to be comfortable in my own skin and for me to say, no, this is what I want to wear because this is what I feel good in. And once people realized that that's what I was going to wear, they started to feel good about it as well. So sometimes it's just, it's just making that leap and saying, I am comfortable in my own skin and I'm going to do what's best for me.
Right, exactly. Exactly. That's such a great example because we have so many, as a culture, so many expectations around weddings and what they're supposed to be. And I had a family wedding where one of my nieces was in the wedding wearing a satin dress. And
I can go back to, outside of the weddings when I was in elementary, I knew what it was. I think I was pretty much set in my sexuality and, it was new to my mom. But the way that I dressed, everything that I wanted for myself, I knew it. And my mom used to just like always put my hair in these like pigtails that I absolutely hated so much, right? And it's like, it seems like something so trivial and something small, but me not being able to wear what I wanted to wear, to dress how I want to dress, to get my hair done how I want my hair done, it felt like a part of me was dying. Like every time I had to wake up and live, in the reality of someone else. It was really, really hard. And I think that's a grief that a lot of, obviously, LGBTQ folks carry around, including myself, that you kind of live this death of yourself every day, every time somebody forced you to doing something just because it made them more comfortable. With that, Alex, and it's something I'm really big on, talked about forgiveness and just letting people change their behaviors. Can you talk about how forgiveness affects our mental health?
Oh my. It affects it hugely. And it's a mix of forgiving other people for being who they are, but also forgiving yourself. And actually that little imaginary conference room in the back of the head, some of the conversations I encourage people to have is internal, with acknowledging that at times you made decisions that were based on where you were at that time, and forgiving yourself for that because you made the best decisions you knew how. You might know better now. So part of forgiveness in mental health is forgiving yourself forgiving others for being who they are. Yeah, I just think that's a huge thing, because without forgiveness, you're carrying around stuff.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that you can't change what happened. It's just whether you carry it around and how heavy it is.
Yeah.
And without forgiveness, it's incredibly heavy and weighs on our mental health, in that people think about it all the time or wish somebody else would do something that they may not be capable of or willing to do. In Alex's case, forgiving his parents for needing a mediator might be something that he would want to do at some point in his growth. Just because they were where they were at that time, and they might get to a different spot without his help, and not giving himself a hard time for taking the role in the family that he did.
I know there's a lot of people who are listening to, this podcast who are just now finding out about the world of forgiveness and how to forgive. I think for a very, very long time, I would always say, I forgive things and I forgive people and I forgive myself. But it was really just a word. It was just me saying it because I felt like that's what I had to say. As a queer woman, there's a lot of things that has happened to me up until this point in my life where I've actually had to really forgive them things and those people that caused whatever strife in my life. Can you talk about what forgiveness looks like? Like, how do we forgive?
Forgiveness has so many sides to it. And the one that comes to mind is that putting it aside, I think when we haven't forgiven somebody, it eats on us in a way that other things don't. Forgiveness and grief have a parallel in that there's a certain point where in your grief you're all focused on what's lost and what remains and what kinds of, what can I do to bring it back or make it change, or all of those things are in there with grief. And then there's a point where you kind of integrate things into your experience, into your life. You figure out maybe what lessons you learned if it's a relationship, or what strengths you've gained from it. And then it's transitioned in a way so that you can let it go.
What I would ask is, this is one of not really a question, but just opening the floor to you. Again, there's a lot of young adults who are going through a lot of transitions in their life right now, who are listening to this podcast. Some for the very first time. And could you maybe just give some sort of advice or some sort of tips on how to embrace this transition and this new identity that is on the other side of where we all are now?
The bottom line is be gentle with yourself, because all of this stuff you're new at, and each new encounter you grow a little more. And I think the other thing with that, being gentle with yourself in any kind of transition, it's easy to get caught up in the anxiety of it rather than breathing and just accepting, okay, this is what's going on right now, and I can cope with this, because most young people even have coped with a great deal before. For an example, to come out to people, and what if, and you get caught up in the what if rather than the acceptance and breathing of the moment, and being gentle with yourself about this, and self-affirming. Those are like three of the things that I would say would be helpful for young people encountering new things and going through various transitions. And whether that transition is, I've just moved away to college, or there's been a tragedy in my family, or I have to walk down the street and I'm really scared.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to add, to that, I would just say, be present and
Yes.
and experience the experience. Don't sleep your way through it and just hope that you're just going to wake up on the other side, because I think that, one day these young adults, you'll be old older adults, and then people ask you for advice about how you transitioned, about how you came out, about how you met yourself on the other side. And it's nothing more beautiful than you being able to detail some of those moments for people to help them throughout their own transitions. I know we all get caught up in just saying, I just can't wait to get to the end. I just can't wait to get to the end. And then we forget to actually enjoy the train ride, even when it's kind of rocky for us.
Right. That's kind of what I meant about breathing into the moment of, you're here and you don't have to rush through it.
Nope.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. You put that beautifully, too.
Yeah. Well, had to take that train ride a lot of times. So now I'm happy to be able to offer anything that I can. So thank you, Bonnie. This has been amazing. Thank you for continuing to join us on this journey of the science of grief and speaks with our young adult audience. This has been fun. This has been insightful per usual. And as always, I cannot wait to talk to you more.
I feel exactly the same. I really enjoy these talks, so I look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Earlier in the episode, I promised that I would perform one of my original poems. This poem is titled, If I Make It Back. Today is no different than yesterday. Today, I am gay, I am out, unsafe, unable to promise my mother I'll make it back home. But I am here, happy, swimming in open waters, stroking the ocean colorful, fighting death and drowning until the waves carry me back to shore. Earlier in the episode, Alex Nitsche talked about how he used to feel self-conscious about his voice and how he's come to like it now. Here's the song Alex wrote, produced, and sings on. It's called A Work in Progress. If you have a mental health concern and need someone to talk to, please contact a mental health professional or your doctor. The number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. This episode was produced by me, Natasha T Miller, Patrick Vaughn, our executive producer, David Lyons, and our editor, David Weinberg. Theme music by Jordan Davis, with sound design and additional music by Sam Bobian. With additional production support from Maida Stange, Antoine Scott, Shameen Sultana, Kaylin Higgins, Aaron Appleby, and Holly Ann Stewart, who also creates all of our original episode artwork. Check it out at WDET.org. The Science of Grief podcast is a collaboration between Science Gallery Detroit and WDET, Detroit's NPR station, and is supported by the Children's Foundation of Michigan, MSU FCU, and Science Sandbox. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your mental health.